Okay, so we are moving on to our final presentation of the day. I will be presenting with two of our newest ergonomists, Chelsea DeRoche, who is our new ergonomist for our Ottawa clinic, and Alicia Canning, who is filling in for my colleague who's on leave right now. So.
Take it up. Okay. When workers think of personal protective equipment, they usually associate it with safety and proactiveness in the workplace. And by definition, personal protective equipment, or PPE, are tools that will protect the user against risks at work. So this can include anything from safety helmets to gloves, eye protection, high visibility clothing, safety footwear, and safety harnesses. What many of us don't realize is that there are risks associated with the use of PPE if it's not selected or worn appropriately. PPE should be selected by considering the type of hazard and the degree of protection required for the actual task in question. Selecting the proper PPE is really important in order to reduce the risk of musculoskeletal disorders. So to exemplify this, we'll be talking about work gloves today. Work gloves are typically used across all sectors, and they have many benefits, so they're often considered to be a staple in the workplace. And that's the case because they can protect from the cold, they offer protection from sharp and rigid materials, and they offer protection from the skin from chemicals and allergens that may cause allergic contact dermatitis or even irritant contact dermatitis. You might be surprised to find out that work gloves can reduce strength and increase effort in power and pinch grip tasks. They reduce manual dexterity and tactile sensations, and they can also reduce performance, and that's especially the case in cold environments. So we're going to be looking at each of these risk factors in further detail today so you can better understand our concerns from an ergonomic standpoint. And we also want you to reduce the effects of these risks in the workplace. So as I mentioned, selection is really important, and that's the case because we want you to get the right size. When gloves are too small, they decrease blood flow to the fingertips, which eventually leads to pain, numbness, and muscle fatigue. It also constrains finger and hand movements, which can increase perspiration. On the flip side, when the gloves are too large, it contains extra material, so that can really get in the way, and fingers tend to slide around the glove. That's especially concerning if you're working with machinery or anything with pinch points that can grab the glove and lead to a traumatic injury. Large gloves also impair fine motor performance and manual dexterity, and strength is decreased, so more effort is needed to complete a task. Manual dexterity refers to the ability to make coordinated hand and finger movements to grasp and manipulate objects. And when you have less manual dexterity, more strength is required to complete a task, and you have a decrease in performance. And I actually want to test this hypothesis today. I have a dynamometer and I have work gloves, so I want to see how strength is affected by the use of work gloves that are too large. I actually tracked down some participants today. Okay. Jennifer, do you mind coming up to the front for a quick second? So what I want you to do is I want you to give your absolute maximal exertion. So all you have to do is stand with your arms to the side and squeeze as hard as you possibly can. You're going to do this twice, one with work gloves and once without. Yeah, I heard that too. So you got about 29 pounds. Now we can try that again. Sorry, 29 kilograms. 29 kilograms, we're good. Now try that again with the work glove, yeah. So you gotta remember that these work gloves are considered to be large for Jennifer. Yeah, this time you got 20. Thank you. So you can see that there's a major reduction in the strength when she's wearing those work gloves. So even though she's giving her absolute maximal effort both times, we're not necessarily getting the same result in terms of strength. So that's what I mean by more strength is required to complete a task. My remote's over here. Work gloves can also affect tactile sensation, and that's the case because there's a lack of sensory feedback. And when that's the case, more strength is required to complete a task once again, and you have an increased effort in power and pinch grip tasks. So again, I have a little activity for you guys today. If I can get 2 participants. Anyone else care to participate? Perfect. So we're going to have a little bit of a race today. What I want you to do is I want you to pick up these mixtures of nails and screws and place them in the bucket one at a time as fast as you possibly can. Now you'll be wearing work gloves. Perfect. There you go. And you will not be using work gloves.
So when do it begin?
As soon as I say go. Are you ready? 1, 2, 3, go. I think we have an obvious winner here. I don't have a cow for you guys, but I'll be sure to mail it out to you. Thank you very much. So you can really see through that experiment that tactile sensation is really affected. So when you're gripping small and medium-sized objects, it relies more on your vision than your sense of touch because you can't necessarily feel the object that you're trying to grasp. And that's the same principle if you picture yourself holding a sewing needle between your fingers. Fairly light object. Barely any pressure would be required to successfully hold on to that needle. But if you were wearing work gloves, you would tend to grip a lot harder. And again, that's the case because you can't feel the objects between your fingers. They also say that tactile sensation is affected due to an increase in finger spacing while you're wearing gloves. So you get that extra material basically between your fingers. And that reduces maximal grip force, and it increases forearm muscle activation during the gripping task. So over the course of the day, if you're using more strength, that can lead to muscle fatigue. For many occupations, working in cold environments is part of the daily work. And so hand protection is considered necessary. What we want to achieve is to have local thermal comfort, all while allowing enough precision for safe and effective work. Now, research shows that performance is decreased when the skin temperature falls below 24 degrees Celsius. And at this point, your hand dexterity is also impeded. We also know that mitts can hold more body temperature than gloves. So where do we go from here? Well, I always want you to measure your hand before purchasing work gloves. You can measure your hand with a tailor's tape around the hand just below the knuckles and fingers but above the thumb, as indicated in the photograph. You want to measure your dominant hand. It tends to be slightly larger, so you always want to measure that one. And you want to consult the size chart. Those are often available in the store and even online. So don't guess your size. Don't take the gloves that are readily available at your work. Make sure you have the appropriate size. You also want to consider the tasks and exposures. So the temperatures you're working in, the chemicals you're exposed to, whether or not you're working with sharps or tools, and how much dexterity is needed for the work. Gloves with rubber palms increase friction between the object and the glove surface. So if you're working with tools throughout the day or if you're required to lift objects, this could be one of the recommendations because less gripping strength would be required. And gloves with textured fingertips provide sensory feedback for improved manual tasks via tactile sensations. So you can see that there's a bunch of little rubber beads on the gloves. So what happens is when you grasp onto something, it kind of puts pressure into your fingers, so you have an increase in tactile sensation. When you're working in the cold, we recommend a multi-layer approach. So what you want to do is you want to put an inner layer of thin gloves, and you want to put mitts over top of that. When dexterity is not needed, you keep the mitts on to make sure that your hands stay warm. And if dexterity is needed, you remove the mitt and you work with the inner layer of thin gloves. We also recommend a 4-compartment configuration for the gloves. So you would have an individual compartment for the thumb, for the index finger, and for the middle finger. And your last 2 fingers would be in a compartment together. So this appeared to be most promising in terms of protection and dexterity. So the theory behind that is that these 2 fingers would stay together to hold in that heat, and then you'd have the other fingers for manual precision tasks.
So, what's the main risk factor that can, or diagnosis that can result from this task? Carpal tunnel syndrome, as well as tenosynovitis of the finger flexors. The main symptoms of carpal tunnel syndrome are numbness, tingling at night, and a reduction in grip strength. Risk factors: non-neutral postures, repetition, excessive force, and vibration. So when Chelsea was given the example of the gloves, because we've lost that tactile sensation and the experiment she showed with the diameter, what happens is you need to actually squeeze harder to do the task. So if I'm, for example, working out with a jackhammer, so I got my gloves on, got to keep my hands protected, use my jackhammer, and now, because I can't feel how hard I'm squeezing, I'm now gripping harder. So as a result, by squeezing harder, my muscles are no longer nice and loose. They're very hard, very rigid. So that actually increases the rate of vibration absorption into the body, increasing the risk. At the same time, another example of force is also the gross versus pinch grip. So we saw with the task here, when they were picking up the screws and putting them in, when you were in the gloves, you had to use the pinch grip because you had to pick up a small object. Well, why is pinching bad? Well, if this remote weighed 10 pounds, if I use my whole hand to lift it, we can simplify it to say, I've got about 2 pounds of force being exerted between my 4 fingers and my thumb. But if I use a pinch grip, I've now got 5 pounds of force being exerted by my thumb and my index finger. So I'm exerting more force on a smaller number of muscles. Now, carpal tunnel syndrome itself is a disorder of the carpal tunnel. The carpal tunnel is made up of the bones of the wrist, the tendon flexors that let us move our fingers, the median nerve, which gives us the electrical stimulation to move our muscles, and this is covered up by something called the transverse carpal ligament, which holds everything into place. Now, each tendon within that carpal tunnel has what around it is called a synovial sheath. The sheath basically acts like a lubricant. So as the muscles are moving, they're sliding back and forth, if they become irritated due to vibration, repetition, high forces, it secretes a fluid to keep the tendons moving smoothly within that synovial sheath. The problem, though, is that this is a very fixed space. You've got that ligament holding everything in place. So with repeated use of gloves, for example, repeated gripping, repeated vibration exposure, these tendons begin to swell. And as they swell, they force the median nerve up against that transverse carpal ligament. That's where the numbness comes from. Because of the fact that nerve is now being pinched against the transverse ligament, the numbness is coming because basically it has nowhere to go and it's falling asleep. So in this example, you can actually see, briefly, the tendons that are moving inside that synovial sheath. So it's that irritation, that swelling, that causes the actual carpal tunnel syndrome symptoms to be experienced. Oh, there it goes again. There we go. Again? Nope. So as I said, the causes, pinching and vibration, are the most common related factors that result from use of gloves.
So another commonly used PPP in the workplace today, are work boots. We often, workers are often required to wear work boots throughout their whole shift, typically sometimes even every day. So it's important to understand the different types of work boots available for the workers to determine which are the best fit. I kind of scoped out everyone's footwear today, didn't really see any work boots, but we'll go through two common work boots that are found in the workplace. So one is composite toe, and a steel toe work boot. So for the composite toe, they're made out of non-metal materials such as Kevlar, carbon fiber, plastic, and fiberglass. Whereas steel toe work boots, as the name suggests, are made out of steel in the toe area. Both these types of work boots are to protect your feet, specifically the toes, from getting crushed or pierced on the job. So now I'll take, throughout the next couple slides, I'll go into detail on the risks and benefits of each work boot. For the composite safety toe boots, some of the advantages of these work boots is that they're more comfortable. So for workers wearing them for longer periods of time, this would be a best fit. They're warmer during colder periods, so on a day like today, working outdoors, these boots would be great. They're lighter, meaning you'll expend less energy throughout the day. They're significantly better electrical resistance than steel toe. So those electricians, great boot for you. They're also convenient for passing through metal detectors. Some of the disadvantages of composite toe work boots is that they're less strong and durable, so they won't last as long, and they tend to be more expensive. As for our steel toe work boots, they're more cost effective, stronger, and offer more protection. They're great for very hazardous working environments because they're known to be shatterproof. Again, they're widely known and accepted in the workplace, and some of the disadvantages is that they make your feet feel colder during colder climates and warmer during warmer climates. The reason behind this is that they're made out of metal, and metal conducts heat. Another disadvantage is that they are heavier. So it's very important for workers to understand the different type of work boots available to them, especially when they're spending the majority, if not all their time, working on their feet.
So some of the health effects from working on your feet, both prolonged standing, fatigue, we just generally get tired more. Neck and shoulder pain, large amount of back pain, knee pain, varicose veins, that's a huge one in hairdressers, believe it or not. And of course, foot and bunion pain as well. Now, beyond simple fatigue and discomfort, we can also see more serious health effects resulting from working on your feet, which include low back pain, painful feet and other foot problems, plantar fasciitis and heel spurs, orthopedic changes in the foot. As we stand on our feet all day long, gravity's pushing down on us. And over years of working on our feet, that arch of our foot actually begins to flatten. Restricted blood flow from standing, swelling in the legs and feet, varicose veins, and increased risk of arthritis in the knees and in the hips. Now, one of the most common causes of foot pain is plantar fasciitis. Who's heard of it here before? It's about half. So basically, the plantar fascia is a ligament that connects your heel bone to your toes. It supports the arch of the foot and acts as a shock absorber. Causes of pain are increased standing, walking, or running, different surfaces, the type of shoes you're wearing, being overweight, and also overuse. So what happens is the example I gave of gravity. We actually lose the arch of our foot. So as a result, with years of working on our feet, that plantar fascia gets stretched. And it's when it gets stretched, where it inserts at the heel, that's where the pain begins to arise from. So signs and symptoms of plantar fasciitis: sharp pain upon initial standing. It improves with a few steps, then worsens with weight bearing. Tenderness when palpating the medial tubercle of the calcaneus or arch area. And it's a dull, achy, constant pain after periods of rest throughout the day. Now, some people are actually genetically more prone to plantar fasciitis. Anatomically, some people have a low arch, or a higher arch, obesity, unequal leg length, or loss of the fat pad on the base of the foot. Biomechanically, you can have a very tight Achilles tendon, weak plantar flexor muscles, or the foot does excessive pronation. So they've actually kind of almost like a club foot. So the foot rotates in more, which also causes stretching of the plantar fascia. Environmental factors can include trauma, increase in activity, working on hard surfaces, working barefoot, which hope not, poor footwear, prolonged weight bearing, and inadequate stretching. Another part of the body prone to it is low back pain. More specifically, the back muscles than anything, because of the fact that while we're working, our back muscles are working to keep us standing upright. Now, Alicia's going to get into this a bit more in her talk, but as we walk, we're hitting the ground. That transmission gets transmitted up our back. It can actually cause tiring or fatigue of our back muscles. Now, we can also find back pain coming from those people who have trouble with the intervertebral discs, where they've got loss of disc space. The discs are there to act as a shock absorber to keep those two bones of the vertebrae in between each one from rubbing together. So when we're walking on the ground, if you're losing that disc space, those bones are actually more likely to bounce off each other and increase the risk of lower back pain that way. So cause of low back pain related to boots, prolonged standing, walking, hard floors, heavy boots, poor footwear, and loss of traction.
So how many of you heard of ErgoMates before? Not many, eh? Well, this has the term ErgoMates, ergonomically correct. So in order to reduce back pain, low back pain, and plantar fasciitis, we recommend wearing ErgoMates. I have a pair here today. They come in different sizes. This is a medium, and in a couple slides, maybe I'll get someone to come up and try them out, to wear one on one foot and then their regular shoe on the other to experience what they feel like. So what are ErgoMates? Well, ErgoMates provide the same relief as an anti-fatigue mat. They're used while being mobile on a job, so they're not good if a worker is static and working in the same area at the same time. They're good if the worker is walking around on hard surfaces. They also claim to have an anti-slip property. Anti-fatigue mats, on the other hand, are designed to reduce fatigue and muscle loading when standing for long periods of time on hard surfaces. For example, cashiers. We've all seen those new mats come into play within the last couple of years, where they're all required to have an anti-fatigue mat. I've actually gotten one at my kitchen sink to maybe help my boyfriend do dishes with me, but I don't know if it works that well. The problem with these mats is that they're designed for static work. So therefore, ErgoMates would come in and they would help, they would allow the worker to be mobile. So if I'd like to get a couple volunteers, 2 volunteers to try one on one foot and then have their regular shoe, if someone's interested. Thank you. We'll send your cow in the mail. Anyone else want to try these? You'll be happy to hear, well, sure. They're roughly $50, so a little bit expensive. What's that?
Oh, wow.
Well, try. No, you leave your shoe on. Yeah, so they just strap on your shoe. We'll go back to that picture. Your shoe or your work boot. Thanks, Charlie.
Okay,
I'll still send you a cow.
I got some more people.
You could leave your shoe on and just slide it in. Oh, you're gonna. So you could find these ErgoMates actually at Lowe's. I've checked at Canadian Tire, Home Hardware, no luck yet. But
Athens Granger, Susie Sallow.
there we go. Found them at Lowe's. They're roughly $50, $60.
Will you marry me?
I feel like it's,
Good job, Trevor.
but I feel like I'm putting my snowshoes on.
So what you'll feel walking in them is softer, walking on a cloud. We often get those types of comments.
May I go nuts with this?
Yeah, go for it, Trevor.
You hear the difference.
You'd actually feel, without the ErgoMate, you could still feel it tingling in your heel, whereas with the ErgoMate, less impact.
And then, of course, the anti-slip.
Don't twist your knee.
Come on, baby.
Okay,
Goodbye.
Less, so,
Yeah.
sure.
great. Thank you.
Thank you.
So research suggests that ErgoMates improve loading rate and center pressure differences, which may affect muscle contraction in the kinetic chain, therefore increasing comfort. They have some protective aspects against MSDs by reducing the load rate during heel strike, thus reducing impact shock, which Trevor just demonstrated. Again, they're beneficial for preventing MSDs, reducing fatigue, and reducing slipping. So what type of workers would wear these ErgoMates? The workers should wear them when they're exposed to prolonged standing and walking. Because when we walk, we have that repetitive heel strike motion, causing an impact throughout the body, which is reduced with the ErgoMates. Workers should also wear these when repetition, force, vibration are present, and when standing on hard floor surfaces such as tiles or concrete. We've just been briefly talking. Some of the unfortunate things about these is that they tend to be a little bit bulky. So for those workers that have to go outside, get their equipment, come back in, maybe they could start designing a type of slipper to go over top. I've seen some workers, Bell, for example, if they have to come in your house, they'll put these slippers on. Maybe that's something in the future they could think of for these ErgoMates to reduce putting them on and off. Because, like we saw, it takes a little bit to get them strapped on. That concludes our presentation for today. Question period.
Well, actually, I've got something to add about the ErgoMates.
Yep, go for it.
We did a research study a couple years ago at a local nursing home. And what we did is we actually walked in and we said to the staff, we want you to rate your level of energy, your discomfort at the end of the day. So we had them do that one day wearing normal footwear and the next day using the ErgoMates. One lady commented by the end of the process, for the first time in 15 years, she felt like she had enough energy to go home, clean her house, and go grocery shopping for the first time. So that's where the whole fatigue comes in, because it's not just the impact. It's your legs get fatigued, your back gets fatigued, the shoulders. It transmits through the entire body. So as a result, it helps recover the energy within your body so you're not actually experiencing that sort of whole body by the end of the day. Okay, now we'll open up the floor to any questions at all. Okay, want to run the mic, please? That's right.
Our work boots at work are CSA certified. With ErgoMates, is there any kind of certification on them or on the instructions or anything that may hamper the CSA certification on work boots?
That's something I'm not really sure of, to tell the honest truth.
Any other questions?
Did you had a chance to try the ErgoMates on miners' boots? And my second question, if you had a chance to test it when actually person driving a vehicle with heavy equipment?
They really can't be used for mining work because of the fact they're really only designed for indoor use. When you get into a mine, for example, it's a lot of stones, a lot of rocks. The ErgoMates themselves, the sole, are made up of a little piece of rubber intertwined. So if you got rocks, for example, inside of it, it would lose any sort of shock transmission ability. That's why sort of Alicia's comment about some form of cover or something to go on top of them would be beneficial because then it could prevent the stones from getting inside. Your second question was driving a vehicle. I wouldn't because of the fact it's still a strap-on, it's still a bulky addition going onto the boot. So I'd be worried about an additional sort of safety concern when it comes to having this, something that could get hooked under the pedal, for example. I would be taking them off before you operate any heavy equipment.
Can you tell me how they would work towards, let's say, cleaning chemicals? Would it break down? Would it stand up to it?
They were actually originally designed for custodians. So as a result, waxing, stripping, etc. So they stand up quite well as far as I'm aware from talking to the company, because that was their original target audience when making the product.
They're actually quite light. I just wanted to note, I forgot to mention that.
And they come in white as well.
Because that won't get dirty.
No.
There's a question over there.
Denis Dalcoin.
Did you guys want to see them? Yeah.
Can you use these for running? Like if you go on a treadmill and whatever, like would it help?
I think
Probably.
it would.
Just once again, to me, it's a bit of a safety concern, just because of the bulkiness going over top of your footwear. But it would give that extra cushioning to help reduce that foot pain. In theory, however, as I said, there is that safety implication that I would have some concern about. There also has been some concern from people over climbing stairs. The front of it, because it is sort of bowed forward, a foot getting caught on metal stairs, for example, when bringing your foot up. There has been some safety concerns raised about that. So ideally, a flat, level working area, like a warehouse, something like that, is the ideal working situation for them.
So we have several questions from online. One of them is, how long do they last? So, and then the other, I'll condense them because they're all sort of related.
Okay, Andy, let me answer the first one, because I'll forget any other question you ask me. That's what happens when you get over 40. The duration of use depends on how often you wear them. No. Ideally, the maximum time period is about 6 months. So, about $100 a year you'd be paying in order to get 2 sets.
And questions just keep rolling in. But
That's
so
good.
I've got, one of them asks, in a nursing home, is there any comments from infection control with the non-skid surface? And then a related one is, if in that same setting, if you're walking very quickly, which is common in long-term care, is there an increase in tripping hazards?
Okay. So let's address the tripping hazard one first. As I said, if there's stairs, there is an increased likelihood that you could get your foot caught, because you're not, the fact is you've got an extra inch of material on the base of your foot. So you have to be aware to bring your foot up more. In terms of slipping on just a standard floor, no, because it's got that anti-traction, anti-slip property built into it. From an infectious disease point of view, well, the only comment I've received is that there was a facility that had a concern. My response to them was it would be treated as you would treat your normal footwear. So if you're having to sanitize, wash your footwear, then you would do the same with the ErgoMates. You just wouldn't put them in the dryer because they'll melt. So you would treat the ErgoMates the same way from the infectious disease point of view that you would your standard footwear.
And then just the last one, because there was a question about whether the ErgoMate would alter the original design of the shoe, but I think you covered that earlier. But the other one is, how thick is the padding?
I think I said about an inch.
Yeah, a bit less.
It's about an inch
About
thick.
an inch.
Oh, didn't he at the back?
You are aware of any footwear that deals with uneven ground?
No.
Not at all?
No. You're talking about ankle rollovers in an underground environment, etc. Nothing will account for underground work. I mean, it's so uneven, puddles, etc. Nothing has been designed to accommodate that. It's almost like you need a robot shoe or something. Yeah. Well, we actually did a study with underground miners on 2 different types of work boots. And what we found was, depending how you walk, because we did this with the Cross Lab from where Dr. Eager comes from, how you walk actually determined which type of safety boot was better for you. Certain people, the way they walked, were more likely to have an ankle rollover wearing one type of boot compared to another. So that was sort of a very interesting thing in that it's not just buying a boot. Sometimes there's a bit more science that needs to go into making sure you're selecting the product that's right for you. Denny?
So earlier on in the presentation, you were mentioning hand protection, and you were talking about increased force required when wearing work gloves. In our operations, we work outside. You mentioned about trying to maintain heat. Is there any kind of technology, like you were mentioning technology with the footwear, is there any kind of technology to keep your hands warm at the same time while reducing the requirement for using excessive force when in the workplace?
Well, as I mentioned, there's that multi-layer approach that we can do. So you can wear a thinner glove with the mitt on top of it, but if you need manual precision, then you're not going to be able to work with the mitt on. But Trevor, can you think of, like, there's the 4-compartment glove as well.
4-compartment. They have battery heated gloves. I was just saying, they have battery heated gloves to help keep your hands warm. My sister-in-law had one at Christmas. It was actually a fleece as well to help keep her upper body warm. And she could actually adjust the heat setting that way. So yeah, you can get heated gloves to help reduce the need for thicker gloves or layering as well. That's always an option as well. The biggest thing is making sure they fit properly.
So there's this comment that 2 comments that just came in. One is Impacto Protective Products has never had a return or negative comment on the ErgoMates with regards to trips and falls, and that proper sizing and ensuring the product isn't too large for the foot is a very important factor when selecting footwear or footwear accessories to reduce tripping.
Exactly.
It doesn't come in like specific size 7, 8, 9, 10. It's medium, large, extra large. So it would be beneficial to try them on with that boot that you'll be wearing, whether it's your work boot, a running shoe, because it might fit differently.
And as I've always been a big advocate of try before you buy. Be it a heavy-duty piece of equipment to an office chair. You always want to make sure what you're going to be purchasing suits the individual it's going to be used for. So you don't go out and buy a new car without test driving it. Why would you go out and say buy a bunch of office chairs without having people sit in them to see if it's comfortable? I gave the example of that $30,000 that was wasted by that one company because they didn't actually follow that procedure. Any other questions? Oh, over here, Denny.
I'm wearing a pedometer just for your information.
We'll just call you Jerry Springer.
Your Fitbit.
I wanted to know if plantar fasciitis is considered a workplace injury, and how would we prove that to our employer?
That's a good one.
Yes, it is. We have had claims accepted for plantar fasciitis and have won. The big argument that you have to make is the fact that they are on hard floor, that they are having to wear hard footwear, that they don't have a natural congenital condition like flat foot, that sort of pronation of the foot that I mentioned, that there is no gait abnormality. So normally when we deal with a compensation claim for plantar fasciitis, we'll send them for gait testing, G-A-I-T. It's basically it's a fancy word for saying how you walk. And so we'll send them to a podiatrist or a chiropodist. They'll do a gait analysis to determine how the person walks. But yes, we have had claims accepted for plantar fasciitis on that grounds.
How would you go about doing that? How would a worker come to your organization to do
Okay, well, maybe a good time for those not familiar with OCal to talk a bit about who we are, what we do. I should have done that at the very beginning, I guess. I just assumed everyone knew. We offer 5 services, one being presentations like this on a wide variety of topics. We'll go right into your workplace. We'll deliver it to 5 people, or something like this, where we're actually delivering to 500 people across the world. We do both ergonomic and industrial hygiene assessments of workplaces. So we work with the Joint Health and Safety Committee, identifying both ergonomic and hygiene problems. Hygiene not being how clean something is, hygiene being air sampling, dust exposure, diesel exposure. So we'll work with the committee and give recommendations on how to reduce those exposures. We also help injured workers determine the work-relatedness of compensation claims. We also have an information service. So if you want information, say, on plantar fasciitis, we would put together that information and send that to you. And we also have a strong research branch. So we work very closely with Laurentian University, as well as the Institute for Work and Health, on different research projects. Our services are free of charge. We're prepaid through your WSIB payments. So basically, you've already paid for us, you may as well use us, we're free. We have a variety of clinics across the province. So now I'm going to get this wrong because I did it wrong on the slide. I was just informed that we're no longer by city, we're by geographic location. So Thunder Bay's northwest. What's separated?
Northeast.
Northeast. Hey, I'm glad someone. Northeast. Ottawa is eastern. Toronto is central. Windsor is. How do you know all this? So Windsor's southwest. Sarnia Lambton, southwest west, southwest east. And of course Hamilton, which is it's Hamilton. Okay. So this is just, that's new. That has just come out in the last 2 weeks about our new names. We're no longer the Sudbury Clinic, we're the Northeastern Ontario Clinic. But we have 7 locations across the province, with Eastern Ontario, headquartered out of Ottawa, I can say it that way, being our newest clinic. So we've pretty much got most of the province covered now. Okay, we have a question?
You mentioned 2 types of work boots, which you need to choose from for your body type to reduce ankle stress. What are those 2 types of boots?
I can't say because it was a specific product name. This study was actually specifically done for a mining company on which boot is better for our workers. So it was specific to the mining industry as opposed to, here's a work boot generically. It was a special mining mucker's boot that we were looking at. Just a little aside for when Alicia was talking about the steel toe versus the plastic composite. Both are CSA approved. They both have the green triangle on them. I actually came across the whole composite versus steel toe by accident. I went in one time, tried on the different boots, and went and started jumping up and down the middle of the store, trying it out. I was like, hey, this is really cool. So, you can come across things very easily when a product works for you, once again, just by trying stuff out. Any other questions? We are running a bit ahead of schedule. We can also go beyond the presentation. If you have any general ergonomic questions, we can sort of field those as best as we can as well. Oh, just wait for the mic, please. The reason we wait for the mic is people online can't hear without the microphone.
Step number 1023.
How safe is the metal compared to the composite one for the boots?
Alicia?
Well, they're both safe. It depends on what type of work you're doing. So if you're an electrician, like I mentioned, composite toe is better. I don't know. What can you say, Trevor?
Well, I think it goes through your strengths and advantages that you listed for both. that the plastic isn't 100% shatterproof.
Durability, if you want it to last longer.
Temperature, you mentioned the temperature, whether hot versus cold. So if you're working in a hot furnace area, you know, the plastic would be better. So you have to look at the advantages and disadvantages of each piece of equipment to make sure it works with your working environment. In a generalized environment, I personally would deal with the plastic just because it is a lot less weight, about half the weight of that impact happening with the ground.
And warmer for women that have cold feet.
Oh, Denny, we have another question? Denny? Just because you turned 15 today means you can't get lazy.
For workers that don't require safety footwear, but they need footwear for comfortable for walking and that sort of thing, how do you feel about running shoes or athletic shoes?
Totally. I've been in office environments where people are complaining of foot, low back, knee pain, wearing 3-inch stiletto heels. I will say, put on a comfortable pair of shoes. We're seeing a huge transition right now from seated workstations to standing workstations. Well, my first recommendation is if you're using a standing workstation, you need to be wearing comfortable shoes. You can't be standing in 3-inch stiletto heels that is still going to give you the back pain. You need to be in comfortable working shoes at all times. Any other questions at all? Okay, well, with that being said, I'd like to thank everyone for attending this year's event again. Please remember to fill in the evaluation forms, both those here in the audience and those online. And Andy, you're raising your hand. Oh, okay, another question just came in. While we're waiting for the question to be read, please fill in the evaluation forms.
If you're working as a tractor mechanic that work with exceptionally heavy parts, would the composite be strong enough to protect the toes or foot?
To answer that question safely, I would say check with the supplier. I'm always a big one on checking the standards, the regs, the durability of the product. So to answer that offhand, I'm really not comfortable answering. I would say check the specs of the equipment before actually trying it. Okay, so please fill in the evaluations. Once again, thank you so much for coming, and we'll see you again next year.